I'd now like to introduce our keynote speaker for the day, Commissioner Chin Tan, the Race Discrimination Commissioner for the Australian Human Rights Commission. Chin Tan commenced his term as Race Discrimination Commissioner on October 8th, 2018, just recently. Prior to joining the Commission, Chin spent 3 years as the Director for Multicultural Engagement at the Swinburne University of Technology in Melbourne. Chin's focus at Swinburne University as the head of its cultural diversity strategy was to work collaboratively across the university and the wider community to ensure that Swinburne succeeded as an institution of cultural diversity excellence. His leadership role resulted in Swinburne on the 23rd of November 2017 being conferred a High Commendation Award by the Victorian Government under the Victorian Multicultural Excellence Awards for 2017 in the business category. Chin was also the chairperson and statutory head of the Victorian Multicultural Commission from 2011 to 2015, and he previously enjoyed a successful career of more than 24 years as a practicing lawyer that included partner roles at a number of Melbourne firms. He was also the co-chair of the Police and Community Multicultural Advisory Committee and also served in many other organisations and bodies. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the podium, Commissioner Tan.
Thank you, Peter. It's good to be up here at sunny Queensland. It was bucketing yesterday when I got here. And I suspect I brought the rain from Sydney, so it's not your fault. I did that all by myself. Great to be here, and thank you for the warm welcome, Peter, and to the Minister. Great to be here. Now, I'm going to do something unconventional. This is Queensland. I was walking down from the hotel, Margaret Street, and I said to my wife, I text her, I'm the only guy wearing a suit. And she said something unkind to me, and said, oh, you're different. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this not because, and I don't think you think it's any sign of disrespect, but it's comfortable. This is Queensland, and I want to blend in with locals. So here I am. But more to the point, we are in the state where we are in multicultural affairs, where it's time for us to take off our suit, roll up our sleeves. And I might even do that later on. And this is about the very essence of what we need to do, practical stuff, day to day. So can I acknowledge, obviously, that we're in the land of the Turrbal and Yurruga people, and pay my respects to the elders, past, present, and emerging. To the Minister, thank you for inviting me. We've met a few times. I've been here, I think, just the third or fourth week of my term, and your hospitality and the things that you shared with me has been tremendous for my understanding of what's happening in this part of the world and right across, and your aspiration for this state. And obviously to the Minister, to the Member of Parliament, Mr. Russell, right across to the Police Chief, Mr. Stewart, and my guest members of the panel, and obviously to Haas Mustafa, a great friend, and who was in my commission way back in 2011. Tremendous work, and I mentioned him for the reason of the tremendous work that Commonwealth Bank does in multicultural affairs, so thank you for that. Interesting, Minister, you mentioned, I was mentioned by Peter that your portfolio includes racing and local government and multicultural affairs. When I got this job, my wife took it back to the office and told the people, and so not many people actually know what a race discrimination commissioner does. They don't even know it exists. Seriously, and I thought, what does that do? So she went to the office and told them that, oh, my husband is now the race commissioner. And it was just before Melbourne Cup Day. I said, oh, great, we're getting to go to Melbourne Cup Day now. So it's a struggle for me to find my place in government and explain to them what I do. So I said, I'm not into this, right? And it's interesting as you get both the portfolio in terms of multicultural, which is a bit easier to explain in terms of racing. So that's where we were at. But we can't get past today, obviously, without acknowledging the tragedy that occurred in Christchurch, and we do so in memory of those who have, in fact, lost their lives. And we in the Commission, and I personally, have spent time with the Muslim communities, sent our thoughts and our condolences, and expressed in formal terms our sympathy, and that we stand in solidarity with the communities there, here as well. And so we want to continue with that. So if I could, to our Muslim friends as well here, right across to wish you, well, and that we are supporting you. So assalamu alaikum to you as well. The essence of what we're trying to get at today, and it's very practical. I'm not used to making practical speeches. I like to make inspirational speeches. But there's so much you can inspire. And there's so much we need to do in terms of getting to a point where we are practical and saying, but how do I do this? And I'm not offering any solution that you don't have. The surprising thing for us, in each of us, is that much of what we need to know, and much of what we're learning is, it's already out there. It's common sense. And coming back from my own background, it helps. And I'm probably a bit unique in that sense that in terms of a senior personality in government, I'm a migrant. I didn't come when I was 3 years old. I came when I was 20 years old as a student. Here I am. So this sort of, I suppose, the merging of different background. And as I said to someone, when I go to my house and talk to my wife and my kids, sometimes I even speak Chinglish. That's what I do. That's who I am. It's a merger of both the world that we lived in. And so in the words of a former member of parliament, federal, way back, and said, I'm just a simple migrant boy. But fully Aussie, and fully Aussie made and own. And so this is where, in that sense, the importance of underlying the concept of what we talk about and what we mean when we talk about multicultural Australia. It's just that. People from different backgrounds who are here today. And they're different for a number of reasons too. They're not simply because they're different from race or religious perspective, but they were born in different places as well and still carry a lot of that heritage with them. And a place that is going to merge all of that interest and make it work is a place where we will be able to find that coexistence. We'll build on that difference as well. Easier said than done. I mean, that's what we do. And I suspect the next generation, my children's generation, your children's generation, your great-grandchildren's generation will be dealing with issues like this in their own ways, in different form. My job and your job is to build the bridges we can to the point where they will take off. And I don't want my kid to say to me, well, Dad, you didn't do anything for us to build the bridges you're supposed to build. I don't know what those bridges are, but we can almost have a good idea that what we need to do is to ensure that we get to as strong a base as possible about that cohesion that we live in our community. So we're talking about this, we're having a conversation. I know 20 minutes, the clock is ticking, I got maybe 10 minutes left. But we'll keep talking, and I'll come back here again because you can't talk about the things I want to talk about in 20 minutes. You just can't. And a lot of the things that we're talking about is not about what I want to do, it's about what you want to do, what we can work with you to make sure we can bring about that result. So in terms of the practical aspect of what we need to do, obviously it's about noting that simple essence of engagement, to hear the voices of the community, to be very in touch with what's happening. And I did that when I was a chair of the VMC, the Multicultural Commission. I spent a lot of time with communities as house as, and you hear and you understand the pain, the predicament, the barriers, the lack of capacity to find openings and opportunities to create something for themselves and their children. And you hear the stories and you talk about African South Sudanese, even in Melbourne, who will tell you that they get stopped 3 or 4 times for security reasons. And I said, why? It's because they're different. I don't get stopped. And people who have applied for 400 times to get a job because, they do have names that sound a bit different and no one's going to, take that opportunity because it's just too much trouble and there are issues they don't know about. These are the things that they confront. Is it important that we resolve it? Terribly important, because you can't create a harmonious, cohesive community if you do not let everyone in, and that everyone has a place in the wagon, in the journey we're traveling. And so this is the essence of why we do that. And I was very fortunate yesterday having met the Deputy Premier. And we had a good discussion. I said, can I mention something that you've done recently in the aftermath of the Christchurch tragedy? And we're talking about making the charter real and how we can do that. And part of that is engagement, and she's done that. So I was mentioning a little bit what she did. And on the 23rd March, she hosted a stall at the West End Market to stand with the victims of Christchurch, and there was a slogan to it, now, spread homos, not hate. Now, is that important? Well, you bet. Politicians who are sending the right messages instead of saying things that are hateful, is that important? It is important. And we'll get to the place when we talk again later on, perhaps, but not perhaps today, about the responsibility of leaders to get the message right, the words right, because people do hear and listen. And this is the thing about national conversation that we need to have. We don't talk about race issues enough, right? Because we almost don't get to the point of doing that. We're just having a discussion before we came in about how do we get to that uncomfortable conversation when we sit with friends and our buddies and drinking in a pub and all of that, and then things comes out in those languages that are inappropriate. How do you stop that? We want to keep our friendship, there's a peer pressure and all of that. Well, hang on, we've done that with gender. We've done that with gender. We'll get more comfortable now. We get television advertisement that tells you, mate, don't be an idiot. You don't do it to your, the female gender. It's just not right. And we got to that point, but in this area of race and race discussion, we haven't got as comfortable as we should. Partly we don't know how to do it. We don't even know the parameters. So am I a racist? Am I not a racist? And these are big terms, and no one wants to be judged. All right? But it's also an issue. We all have prejudices in many ways, hidden or otherwise, biases. We're all human, right? It's like anyone here doesn't sin, well, we all do. The essence is, how do we get to understand where those issues might lie and what we need to do? And the point would be, how do I get better? How do I not think like that? How do I move away from that? Good place to start. And we need to encourage, talk to people, particularly young people, and said, how do we get to that point? And part of what you do as a government, obviously, is to continue with that at different levels, service provisions, access, opportunity, so that new Australians in particular will find a way into the system, into our fraternity, in our lives, and make a meaningful contribution and feel they belong. Now, these are the challenges. Not easy, because that very aspiration we have is in many sense an equal burden for many of us to try and make it practical. So leaders in government, yourself sitting here, making decisions, you have a fundamental role to make sure you devise the right programs, the right policy, and the right, create the right opportunities where people might be able to find a way in. And for me, the essence is to be able to know, to be sensitive and responsive to those needs. And you can only do that if you're out there. You know who you're talking to. If you don't, it's easy to do programs, right? And I was at this saying, even in Swinburne University, we said, I've seen before, it's easy to run programs. It's easy to run multicultural initiatives. But if you see it as a job simply, you're going to miss out. You're going to miss out on all the things that matters. And I've seen it before. You can have a job, it's got a nice title, you can be Director of Multicultural Engagement Swinburne. Anything else you would choose to be. And I've seen it before. You go to work and you put on your hat. That's my job for the day. 5 o'clock, gone, finished, take it off, put another hat on, and go home. Now, the stuff we do, that's just work. You can't. Not in this area. It's a way of life, it's a way of living, and we need to get to that point where we subscribe to that, your principles. And I applaud your government in doing that. Third state or territory has done that. Victoria, ACT, now yourself. Big, with New South Wales and got to that point, yeah. So I'm trying to push for that. Very important. Why? It's a statement of belief and the courage. This is what you believed in. These are our principles, right? And to stand on that soapbox and say, this is what we believed in, that's very courageous. And the principles I read are very in tune with a lot of things we believed in. So the fundamentals are there to get it right. In terms of some practical issues, I'm not going to go through how wonderful a multicultural country we are and how wonderful Queensland is, a multicultural place, because I won't have time. I've got about 6 minutes left to do that. The practical issues would be something that I'm happy over time to condense what I've got here as a kind of a format document that we can then share with you, rather than for me going through the whole lot today. Because I would just simply won't have time. I got an 18-page document to read to you. But where I did want to spend time was to be able to engage with you and say, I'm here, that I could be accessed. And I want to leave as many of my cards here as possible with you. I don't have a big program to dish out today and say I'm launching this or that. It's still early in my time, and I'm taking that step at a time because I'm learning. Not in terms of I don't know what I'm doing, I do. It's learning about what's important in the communities which you lived in, the things that you might want to tell me so that I can frame. We're trying to frame a national framework for anti-racism. We'll build on what we've done in the past in terms of the anti-racism program, but we want to build on that, and we want to have a framework for cultural diversity as well. And each will be quite different in its perspective, in its resourcing, in the focus, and the opportunity as well. So can I, again, thank each of you sitting right across, and we'll hopefully have more opportunity for me to expand some of my ideas through the forum here. But in terms of the fundamentals, can I just leave very quickly with the 5 minutes I have, 3 important messages we have here. Multiculturalism, cultural diversity, is a reality in this country. We don't have a choice. It's here to stay. And when I was the chair of the Multicultural Commission, I would have occasion when I would stand in front of an audience, and I know there are people who didn't think we should have multiculturalism in this country. It doesn't work. They tell you it doesn't work. Newspapers will tell you. You read the wrong newspapers, will tell you that as well. It doesn't work, mate. Throw it out. Move on. Okay. And I said, it's a practical experience for me. And I said, okay, all right. I'm the chair of the commission. Assuming for a moment, indulge with me, I could abolish multiculturalism. Give me a pen, and I sign up. Chin Tan abolishes multicultural affairs in this country. Now what? What do you want me to do? Where should we go from here? Without diversity, white policy, it ain't gonna work. We've gone too far ahead. We've moved beyond that. We've become what we are because we chose where we want to be. So it's like a democracy. It doesn't work perfectly, but we don't throw it out. We work with that because that's what we are. So if multiculturalism is a way of life, don't even think about it. And we remove that concept of understanding that we're not even talking about throwing this out. We have more time and resources in making it work. And that's what we need to be doing. And secondly, in a multicultural community we lived in the place where we are, there is no place for racism. No place for bigotry. And I know some politicians have said that you're right to be bigoted. Well, not in my world because it's dangerous. The fundamentals about what we do as in the Human Rights Commission is to believe and subscribe to fundamental human rights. And I haven't seen the fundamental human right to say you have the right to be bigoted or you have the right to be a racist. In fact, there isn't any. And I know about the free speech, but there's no fundamental right to have a free speech to hate and to denigrate people. And that is not in those principles of our human rights that I know of, that we subscribe to as a country. And I take some pleasure in doing what I do. The Race Discrimination Commission, the act was promulgated or came into place in 1975. Just as we moved away from white policy, the first discrimination act this country, this wonderful country, put forward was the Race Discrimination Act. And I'll tell you why, because Australians believed in that we don't believe in racism. We don't want to have a country or a nation that believes in racism. So they've done that. But we need to be reminded time and again, after 40-odd years, that's what we subscribe to. And sometimes it gives me a bit of pleasure in doing that, coming, as I've said, as a almost full-grown adult migrant to this country. And I have some tradition in democracy and freedom and human rights concept. I know a little bit of that from where I was because the Americans were bombarding us with this in Malaysia. But I had, I suppose, a tradition in understanding that sort of the concept that we're talking about. And when I got here, I became more imbued with what we stand for. And it gives me great pleasure to be able to go back and tell Australians, but hang on, it's not what I believed in. It's not from Malaysia, You guys said this is what you believed in, right? right across as a country. Right? And from any background, this are the fundamental principles about human rights that we believed in. This is our charter. This is our humanity. We talk about race as an issue. We mentioned that, and people said, how do I get across to understand, and my children and people out there in the workforce, how to get people to not be, biased and have preconceived ideas and biases. I said, well, what will cut across all of that is one fundamental, the human right, the dignity of the individual as a person. When you have that, then you understand how it works. It doesn't matter if you're Indian, Muslim, Chinese, Irish, anyone. The fundamentals are there, that you're a human. The last point I wish to make is this, and I've been sending a message right across in the discussions I've had, is that we must draw a line. We must draw a line against racial, religious bigotry, prejudices, discrimination, hatred. And we do so not because it's convenient, politically or socially expedient. And we do it because fundamentally it's right, and it is the answer to harmony and to peace in this country. And so we will draw the line with ourselves. We'll draw the line with our families as we sit down for dinner. We'll draw the line with our workplaces. We'll draw the line with our colleagues, the clubs we belong to. We'll draw the line in our community and organizations we belong to, the corporate sector. We draw the line with our politicians, elected officials. And then we will hold ourselves accountable, each of us, for what we do or don't say. We'll hold our family accountable. We'll hold our communities accountable. And we'll hold the government accountable. We'll hold the politicians accountable. And these are important elements. So where do you start? You start at that level. Okay. So in terms of a government, services you provide, the fundamentals are clear. And I always go to the fundamentals because the fundamentals drive us. You got to have your principles about what you've believed in. You've got that. You got to have your programs, you got your action plan. It's not perfect. Nothing is perfect. You learn and relearn. But it must be responsive. It must be geared to community's interest. Far too often, we don't do that enough. And you got to be creative, and you got to be courageous enough to be innovative as well. Don't go by the books, because this is an area where the books won't give you the answer. You got to go out there and find out what the new books are written on, and you'll find those answers. What's the reason being this? It's very practical. And then I'll give you a few examples. When I was chairing the VMC, we had about $6 to $8 million to give away. 8 different programs for different sort of level of community engagement. And I've been quite, I've been out there quite a fair bit with communities. I know most of them anyway, what they do. And so there's a committee that looks into the funding applications. 4,000 comes in, it's kind of a boiled down to 2,000 will get the app funding, and it comes to me to be signed off before it goes to minister. You look through it and you said, oh, they didn't want to give money to the African Ladies Sewing or Weaving Association. Only wanted $500. And I said, oh, that's because they don't know what they do. So I said, take the money from the Greeks and the Chinese and give it this group, because they already have so much anyway. Don't mention this, but it wasn't the Greeks or Chinese, but there were some big groups. Why? Because that money was important in the empowering of the community that don't normally have a lot of access. South Sudanese parents, women who were singing together and doing things that they could, because that was one way of doing that. Does that matter? And if you sit there and you're headed to the department and you're signing off and you wonder, what did they do? How do I make it work? How do I make it real for them? How do I make that an important element of how I can reach out to them in a special way? And little things like that. Now, I'm a bureaucracy, I'm a bureaucrat now, so I'm not going to back it, because these are things that happens. You go to a community housing area, and there's a Eritrean lady on level 3, and these are all flats. They walk up, there are no lifts in the stairs. And you go up there and you sit, talk to her. She's in the 70s. And then she tells you, I don't go shopping till the weekend. I said, why? So because my kids come over and help me bring the stuff up, and carry the groceries up, because I can't, I'm too old. I think, which bureaucrat thought it was okay to put a 70-year-old lady on level 3 and put the young kids on level 1? Now, does it matter? It matters. It matters in the life of that person. Now, I'm not suggesting that, there's something wrong with the system, but these are the kind of responsiveness. One more question, what are we talking about putting up there? Because we'll be saying, be grateful, you got a place to stay now, take it, and move on with your life, but it's not that simple. What we do can then trap people in places where they don't find the opportunity to find ways to move on. And I'm seeing even second generation, I'm seeing African, born here, who have a degree, who's still finding out how to get a job. Because we said, this is a land of opportunity. You can move on very quickly, get a degree, and they have. Some have PhDs, still can't find a job. I said, well, what's wrong? Right? And they'll tell you why. And these are things that we can do because we are the ones who open the doors and create the channels. So in terms of reflection about what we can do on the very specific, and I'm happy to sit down and perhaps draw a kind of a guide about the areas that might be very relevant and pertinent to what we do on a daily basis as a guide for us. So I do apologize, but like I said, time is an issue, but we'll try and redeem some of that through the panel discussions we have. So thank you very much for this opportunity. And thank you for traveling this journey collectively. If you didn't believe in it, you wouldn't be here. But don't stop here because you're the converted. Spread the news. Thank you very much.